Hey guys and girls, Board now back with you. On this video I will be reviewing episode 8 of the third season of Star Trek Picard. We're in the end game of the season now. This episode is called Surrender, and after this one we have 2 more left of the season and 2 more left of the show, because this is of course the last season, and it's set up pretty nicely for the finale, which I'm guessing could be a 2-part finale. I could see them doing that as it's all heading towards Starfleet Day, but at the end of this episode we get what hardcore Trek fans really have been waiting for all season, which is the original crew all reunited, all in one place. And I've got to say, it feels pretty damn good the way it all plays out. They do execute it very well, even though it's like a big old nostalgia fest. I can't say I didn't, have a little pop moment myself. But so the episode overall, another solid episode, but another one with flaws. I would say this one is the best one in a while, in a couple of episodes at least. But there are pacing problems. I did think it dragged on a bit, and there's a particularly bad bit with Riker and with Troi. It's some really cheesy lines of dialogue, and just their interactions in this episode I thought were really bad, partly because she's not the best actress, but it was more than that. It was very heavy and melodramatic, I felt. So there's certain cheesy moments like that once again dragged the episode down. But overall, I was pretty positive on this one. And it starts with the best shot, really, which is Vadic smoking, because who gets bored of her smoking, especially since it's a shot of her and space surrounding her, and she's just smoking into space. Now that's fucking glorious, and I won't have anyone say any differently. So she's taken over the ship, she's kidnapped or hijacked the crew on the bridge. So you've got Shaw in there, Seven, and a bunch of others. Shaw, I've got to say, after the first few episodes, has really felt like a disposable, useless character for me. I know I wasn't high on him in the first episode anyway, but since then he has had better episodes. But yeah, in the last couple he's just felt really useless and disposable, like he has no real purpose at all. Just feels like a spare part to me. But anyway, she continues her takeover, and she's trying to blackmail Jack into handing himself over. We're still not sure exactly why they want Jack, but she blackmails him, or tries to blackmail him, by saying, I will continue this on if you don't hand yourself over. And then she executes one of them, and there's a term where she looks like she's going to execute a different one, and it's meant to be this big surprising moment. Then she executes someone else, someone who's under her control, but whatever. But yeah, I do love that Amanda Plummer Vadic uses the word execute, because the first thing is then Jack tries to mind warp her, or mind warp one of the crew to try and get them under their control, so that they can maybe do something. And he explains it to Picard and Beverly, and they're concerned, but he talks them into it, partly because Sydney backs him up because of what he did to her last week. So it's yeah, I've seen this, he can do this, let's give it a go. And once again, some of the stuff with Jack, some of it I like, some of it I'm not so keen on, but this mind warp stuff is pretty bad. I don't really get into it. Also, I think anytime this series falls back on effect style moments, it's not as good, because the standard of the effects, they're not great really. It is a bit too flashy, and it's just too obvious, and it's like a CGI effect. So some of those moments, even though some of them are quite good for what they're doing, it just takes me out of the drama. But so Jack tries that, But Vadic is like one step ahead, and she cottons on to, says, "Hey, is that you, Jack, in here?" Vadic's great in this episode, by the way. I know there's been 1 or 2 episodes where she's felt a bit wasted, but in this one she's on full form, and it's really good to see. But so that doesn't work out, and then it comes to a head where I love the fact that Vadic uses the word execute, because, yeah, it's basically, if you don't hand yourself over, Jack, I'll execute whoever motherfucking last one of them. Might as well be. And you can't tell me the writers weren't thinking of Pulp Fiction when they used the word execute with her. That just seems too coincidental. So those are the stakes of the episode, and she's going to kill the rest of the crew if Jack doesn't hand himself over, and there's back and forth. His parents doesn't want him to, but he's insisting it's my responsibility to do that. At some point, Vadic tries to use like emotional blackmail because she gets like one of the other crew members to talk about his son, and I'll tell you something as well, because in the end Jack appears as though he's going to hand himself over. The other thing is then they've locked the bridge, the systems, basically Vadic has control of them as well. So even though like data has been unplugged, like she can still tap into him and get the evil side, which is of course law. So it all comes to a head with Jack deciding to hand himself over, but the twist is that he's got a device which can basically blow up the bridge, and which would kill himself, which sort of calls her bluff because of course she wants him. My stuff with this, because I like this stuff for the most part and there's good stakes on it, I'm enjoying Vadic, but it does drag on a bit. This is what I mean about the pacing and it feeling a bit too padded out. Because there are scenes you could cut from this episode, which is partly how I felt with last week. There are scenes which are just monologues, which don't add to anything or don't add much. Or there's just like a couple of extra scenes that could have been cut. And I think this includes some of this stuff, or at least the scenes could have been cut down. They could have been a bit shorter. So that's kind of Jack's trump card, and he's got this device. So he forces Vadic to let the rest go, or at least she like locks them in a room so they're not in harm's way. And Seven stays behind, and it's just for a character moment for her. She just feels it's her place to be there, and she wants to stand with Jack against Vadic. But in the end, it's more symbolic because she doesn't really do anything by the end of the scene. The only thing she does is when they eventually get control later on, she takes control and she gives the order to fire on the enemy shit. It's like fire, and it's a great scene. Like Seven is in her element, but it just feels like there wasn't enough of a storyline reason for her to stay with Jack. So you've got Jack and Seven now, and once they finally regain the control of the ship, they use the force field to protect him and Seven, and ultimately they win the battle. Vadic is overpowered. She's shot out the bowels of the ship, which is very much like that Carrie Fisher scene in Star Wars. Once again, because of the effects, it looks quite bad, but in the moment it works quite well, because like Seven's like, get the hell off my ship, basically. So that's all good stuff. So I should talk about how they regain power ultimately, and that is so once again they try to get through to Data so he can hopefully overcome Law. Risky strategy once again, but I guess desperate times call for desperate measures. And not for the first time in recent weeks, the Data stuff is probably the highlight of the episode. You get like this big philosophical battle with him and Law, like him trying to basically bring himself back together. And I do like the line, elementary, my dear Watson from Law at one point. That was a good touch. But this stuff, even though it drags on a little bit, I did enjoy it. And once again, Brent Spiner gives such a good performance from this episode. He's really on great form, as always. But yeah, they have this very stylish visual, as I said, philosophical battle. And what it comes down to is Data gets in touch with his humanity, because he has this cute tabby cat that appears to him. And at first it looks like they've lost him. Of course they don't, because, in the end the good guy is going to win. But it looks like they're going to lose him. But the twist is, then, because Laura's tapped into all of Data's qualities, like the cat stuff, it means then essentially he has become one with Data. So Data is, the two sides are reunited and Data returns. And of course it's all a bit timey-wimey stuff, because it's not the Data we know, it's another version of Data. Because later on, when everybody's reunited, they ask him if he feels bitter about, he once had the wish of just letting him die, and he responds by saying that Data, I'm sure, is resting peacefully. This Data wouldn't want to be anywhere else in the world, or in the universe, he uses, of course, which is a good line, even though it's a little bit of a cop-out in a way, but it's definitely a good line and a good moment, and they sell well. So that was good stuff, the way they eventually regain the ship. And it's good to have little touches that shows it is a slightly different Data, because of him when he comes over the intercoms and he has the line about one pissed off AR system or however he says. So that was really good. And he has a line about monologuing bad guy. A ship change is in order. So, and then eventually, as I said, Vadic is defeated, and they blast the other ship to smithereens, and you get all these emotional reuniting, because Riker and Troi at this point are back on the ship, along with Worf and Raffi, so more on that in a moment. But you get everyone reunited. Now, Vadic, before this all goes down, she mentions to Jack about a red door, and that's a secret. And when Troi gets back on the ship, she mentions how there's darkness on the ship, and she's later says then the person talking in Jack's head isn't Jack. So we then get a therapy session to end the episode, because of course we do. This stuff is a little bit cheesy, but it works well enough. It works well as a character beat for Troi. But yeah, she brings up the red door, and she's like, let's open the red door. And you get a visual of heading towards the red door. It seems like there's fire inside or something red coming from it, but the door's about to be open, and we cut to credits. So let's see where that's going. I'm a bit trepidatious about this Jack stuff, I've got to say, but obviously another big reveal coming with the red door, and they're all heading to Starfleet Day, of course, as well. That's going to be the big finale of the season. But even though there's a lot of cheesy nostalgia type moments, I've got to say the stuff with the crew, the original Next Generation crew, reuniting is pretty good stuff. It pretty much all lands quite well, so I can't really complain too much with that stuff. So let's talk about the Riker Troi scenes, with them on their own, because these are the worst scenes in the episode. I don't care, and this is another example of pacing, because this could have been one long scene if anything. We didn't need to jump between them and have two separate scenes. All that they say could have been said in other scenes. One long scene. And I don't know if it's just because, I'm not up with all of this history, so maybe if I was, it would have landed more, but I just thought they were badly written scenes, very cheesy, very melodramatic. We get the line about Troi, how the changeling came up to the house looking like Riker, and she says she knew it wasn't him, but they obviously kidnapped her. And then it's revealed Riker gave them the code because they were basically torturing Troi. But then you get the really cheesy stuff in the second scene, which is the stuff about losing the son and how Riker never came to terms with it, and they have a little bit of a fight over it. But Troi has a really bad line in the scene, which is you should know you can't skip to the end of the healing process or something like that. So those scenes were just to me pretty dead and boring. It's hard to believe because there is stuff in this season with Riker who I really like as a character overall, but there have been scenes in this season where they've actually made Riker quite boring. So I don't know how they've done it. That's some achievement. But those scenes are definitely the weakest in the episode. Otherwise, I think it's a pretty strong episode, and I would say one of the best episodes of the season for me personally. And then Worf shows up and rescues them, and once again it's good to have Worf back. He was missed last week for sure, but his kind of pseudo philosophizing waffle is much more entertaining than listening to Riker and Troi in the previous instance. So he's back, Raffi's back, they rescue Troi and Riker. There's a bit of emotion, Troi reunited with Worf, and then they join in the rest later, and we get the big emotional reunion. So there you have it. That's the episode, episode 8 of the final season. So 2 more to go, and yeah, solid episode. I enjoyed this one for the most part. I would say just a couple of nitpicks really. So 2 more now till we finish the show, and should have a big finale coming up with the Starfleet stuff. As I said, it feels like that could well be a 2-parter going into that stuff, and I'm not sure. What do you think about the reveal with what's going to be behind this red door and with Jack? What do you guys feel about that? Do you have any ideas what it could be? Are you looking forward to finding out the answer? So just let me know some of your general thoughts. Speaking of Star Trek and modern Trek, I will be covering the new season of Strange New Worlds, which is coming in June. So not that far away now, just a couple of months, and I'm looking forward to that because I enjoyed the last season of that, the first season, so excited to get back to that, and I'll be covering it for the first time on the channel, so that's good. In the description to this, I will post a couple of other links for other YouTubers I follow that cover Star Trek material. I'll post a link to Mild Fuzz, who cover Trek, the modern Trek, so they're doing this, but they also do classic Trek, and they're doing Deep Space Nine, if you like that show, and also the Underclay Bejourn and Fletcher on YouTube, basically, who covers Picard and Deep Space Nine. So I'll leave those links in the description of this video. But I'll be back soon with more Star Trek and more TV. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.